And here, joined as ever by my good friend and comrade, Matt Leck. How you doing, man?
I'm doing good, David. Good to be here.
Yeah, man, another Sunday show. We always appreciate sharing these with y'all. And I mean, it's getting to that point where we're having to excise a lot from these, Matt, because there's just almost too much news to do. And I'll tell you, on Tuesday, I remember we were talking with Neil about these executive orders. And I said something to the effect of, we're not going to really get too deep into this because by the time, it's tomorrow, none of this stuff, the whole story could change. And I mean, exactly what happened. I mean, these executive orders, I mean, you first got the judiciary getting involved, and then you had Trump's new press secretary giving absolutely no clarity as to what was going on.
We're rescinding the executive order, but not rescinding sort of the vibe behind it.
They were using this word rescission, and I don't want to come off as like a kind of uneducated figure, but like it is so funny how in those kind of like official speak, there's all these new words I've never heard in my life before, and I would consider myself a pretty well-read individual.
No, I have scored in the 98th percentile in verbal like GRE, and when I saw rescission, I'm like, I had to use context clues of like, oh, this is another form of rescind. Because I've never used rescission.
Well, like
and she's used it so much that it seemed like a typo. Like, is that how you
people who
it?
Talk like that? That's when your lawyer's talking to you, or your police officer. 'Cause police officers also kind of speak in this almost incoherent language. I mean, I'll never forget. I had my middle school principal was like a real kind of good old boy, and not this real great, honestly, a great accent. But I remember him one time, like I got in a fight with another kid, and he calls my mom and he's like, just going to let you know that Mr. David has gone into an altercation today in his school. And it's like, what the hell altercation, dude? You don't talk like that. Anyways, it's just a funny thing when people in positions of authority feel the need to use this kind of language. But that's not the point of this. I mean, the Trump administration, I think, has been, a lot of the things that we've been expecting. I mean, horrifying news. I mean, this Guantanamo story is truly despicable and very worrying. So, like, a lot of horror. I mean, hell, the plane crash earlier this week as well. A lot of horror, a lot of like serious, worrying things, and then just a lot of like kind of typical Trump incompetence.
Yeah, I mean, with the to zoom back to the beginning with the freeze. Already within Trump world, you have members of the coalition, whether representatives who tweeted out in defense of it one day, and then the next day say, I think thanks to Trump for listening to all my constituents who had a concern and rescinded it, right? Like that, what they're saying that publicly, privately, some of them are just true believers, but a lot of them are saying, why are you giving them an opportunity to mass forces so early in the administration? Why are you... It's like you're don't give Chuck Schumer a push. He's fucking down. He's not doing anything. If you're a Republican, you don't want them to, and which I mean Trump did, because and the FAA stuff with Elon booting the guy out, so like to where Sean Duffy, MTV Christian, has now Department of Transportation lead has to walk away from a question saying, is there an acting head of the FAA? It is the Doge, like this is your first Doge result, in my opinion, is this crash here, which a helicopter, and it's not the first time Musk has went after a plane since Trump has won. Like after the election, they had to turn back flights, I think in Tennessee or something, because SpaceX debris was falling back into the area. Like it's really remarkable.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Doge point is 100% true, and like there's no doubt about it that like part of this FAA crisis is fueled by Elon Musk's desire, to be able to just blow up rockets at his own whimsy. And I mean, I think we're going to see a lot of this kind of stuff. I will just say, like I was saying this to my wife the other day. It's like the thing with Trump and some of these kind of things is you got to be able to recognize a couple things at once. Yes, there's a lot of incompetence there, right? And you see this executive order was just so out of control. You see this press secretary, no idea what it is that she was doing. I mean, I believe that the judge, if not, did threaten to issue a gag order against him. She was saying so many contradictory things that like nobody knew what was going on, which you can't just say 10 different things if you're the government. You are going to get into trouble with the judiciary there.
Well, it's funny you mentioned the rescission thing and how it's used. Actually, that's going to be relevant to judges. They're going to have to look into that comment about this order in itself. Yeah.
But I'm trying to pull this up because I'll tell you one thing that was really kind of disappointing to me was the way that I mean, we talked about this during the main show, so we won't like retread all those steps. But the weakness from the Democratic leadership. Oh yeah, this is what I was getting at. It's like, there's a lot of incompetence, all that, obviously, but they also get all this kind of information, and that information is that like, okay, the Democrats are in complete disarray. So it's rather than being like, there's all this kind of cliche sometimes like, oh, the Democrats don't know how to do politics and the Republicans are so good at it. Honestly, it really is like two very, very incoherent and incompetent forces. The difference is that I think the Democrats aren't particularly invested in the fight, which allows like the weirdest kind of Republican shenanigans to be successful. And the fact that we didn't see a very serious response from the Democrats, I find to be really, really despicable. And like this from AOC, I don't understand what the hell she's going on about. Jeff Stein, reporting that the White House Budget Office has rescinded the executive order, and AOC says this is Trump's first major loss. When we fight, we win. Well, what fight are we talking about here? I mean, literally, what happened was a judge got involved. Yeah, a lot of people on Twitter and in the media were kind of upset with it, but I'm sorry, this was not like coming from maneuvers from the Democratic Party, the Democratic leadership. In fact, like I would say that like somebody like AOC, who I know definitely cares about what's going on here, unlike a lot of other Democrats, is probably invested in making sure that like Medicaid doesn't get pulled from people. She should probably be using this as an opportunity to point out how ineffective the leadership of the Democratic Party is, to try to bolster her faction in the Democratic Party into a leadership position. Because very clearly, Hakeem Jeffries, is like, oh yeah, we'll do this mañana, right? It's like, we'll do it tomorrow.
We're going to meet at 1 tomorrow after lunch.
Oh shit, and then they get lucky and they're like, oh, we get to cancel the meeting, right? Which is the funniest thing. So if just like, not to go too deep into the timeline, but like there's that order from the judge and the judge says, okay, we have to pull back, we're suspending this executive order, right? And then the Trump administration says, oh, we'll just pull the whole thing. And then they cancel their meeting. And then the press secretary is like, actually, we've done 10 rescissions and added 3 rescissions. And okay, so now nobody knows what the fuck's going on. So like, they not only did they not have the meeting and not enact a stop on this, but they actually, were kind of thrilled that they didn't have to even meet or engage in this kind of question in the first place. So that they're completely on the back foot is what I'm saying.
I was just going to say, this is back foot trying to pretend like you're serving. And that's where she's at right now with that stuff. And my concern with it is that, they get around to actually going after certain things. And it's harder to mobilize against because this is declared as a victory because we got, the Medicaid portals back up and running, which is good. That was a huge, massive, frankly, fuck up that Trump even wanted to avoid, I think. But what happens to some of the smaller stuff? And not to mention the stuff that's being frozen on different orders, like the NIH funding. There's all sorts of research into medical research that is being just kiboshed now because of these idiots.
I'll tell you, that's such a scary thing. Just realizing the destructive nature of a lot of the activities of Musk, if he ends up getting through, this might date the episode. So, just seeing what ends up happening with some of these appointments in the Trump administration, just like the serious damage, because like these kind of things, if you start pulling back funding on research, I mean, these are things that are, have effects years and years and years down the line. Very clearly, the Trump administration doesn't kind of appreciate the scientific method, let's say. And it's going to be, the consequences go far beyond these 4 years.
Yeah, one thing I do want to just flag from the hearings is RFK and Bernie going back and forth. RFK accusing Bernie of taking pharma money because guess what? Employees of pharma, just like employees of any other industry in this country, donated to him. And RFK, the guy who really doesn't support Medicare for all, he doesn't support Medicare for all, is calling Bernie on the take. Well, let me tell you something. RFK gets an awful lot of money from litigation, from quack science, from a lot of stuff. He is working. And also, fundamentally, he is a aristocrat who is concerned that y'all are too unhealthy to insure under a Medicare for all program. And everything else is backfilled from there. So when he says make America healthy again, that's because he's worried about his bottom line. He doesn't actually care about any of y'all.
I think that's a great point, Matt. And the statement he made about Medicaid, that we think that we're happy with the results we're getting for the $900 billion or whatnot they're spending. That's I think that, there should be a lot more funding actually that goes into American healthcare and providing for people. But I think it is a pretty damn good thing that we are giving healthcare to 37 million children. What the hell are you seriously talking about? It really shows how out of touch they are. And I don't even know if it's worth engaging, but you see these kind of MAGA guys or guys who are just sort of learning how to read or engage with politics. And they're like, well, you might be upset that he's saying that, but what he's actually trying to do is saying that health exists outside of just doctor's visits. Well, do you know what's the worst case scenario, right? It's dealing with all of the health crisis in our food, blah, 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 and not being able to go to the fucking doctor and dying of a preventable disease.
Exactly.
When you talk about health crisis in America, the amount of Americans who die from preventable disease, right? Because they do not have access to a doctor is astonishing for a global, hegemon to be experiencing. So to sit here and be like, let's pull back the healthcare and also push a bunch of bullshit about how Americans like private health insurance. That's the biggest fucking lie I've ever heard in my life. No one's like, oh my God, I love Aetna. They like being able to go to the doctor, you idiot. They like to be able to go walk into the doctor and to be seen when something hurts or they're worried about something. Or they're having trouble sleeping or whatever, right? People like healthcare. They don't like private insurance. Are you fucking out of your mind?
Yep. Yeah, it's crazy when people point out to those, look at people they like having it. I like having mine. It's fucking great. I have the best health insurance I've had as an adult. I'm fucking glad about that. But you know what? I would like it if all of a sudden my job disappeared because Elon sued it or something because we said he did a Hitler salute. I'd like to still have healthcare, even if that disappeared. And, it's all a big fancy show. But I do think it's a big part of Trump's coalition is his appeal, because when I talk to normal people, it is, I hope we can get all this junk out of foods, be more like Europe. And you know what? That is something that should be addressed by, the American government.
Yeah, I will just say, Matt, there's a lot of misunderstandings about European food regulation. A lot of this is kind of like TikTok stuff. There is an anxiety. I think what I'm saying is I hear what you're saying, Matt, and this is kind of motivating for a lot of people because they see American what is accessible to people is not necessarily good stuff. I totally agree with that. Right. But a big part of that is poverty in America. Yeah. Right. It's school lunches is a great example of this, right? Oh my God, American school lunches are this or that. Well, it's because we provide meals to children who don't oftentimes get them, right? And that is one of the big reasons for why food is the way that it is in at least in the school system, let's say, because you have to feed so many kids on a smaller and smaller and smaller budget because the Republicans keep on cutting the education funding and the funding that goes to foods for kids, right? These, yes, should our health, our food system improve? I'm all for it. But again, these things are about the rich having too much shit and the rest of us not having enough. So instead, again, and this is a really great way that a material issue, and you can't actually get more material than food on the table, right? Becomes culture war, frankly. right? Oh, their kids eat too many Cheetos or whatever.
Right.
And it becomes a culture war thing instead of actual like, oh man, it sounds like we're not giving enough money to make sure our kids can eat healthy. Because the funniest thing is, you remember when Michelle Obama made school lunches her big thing? The hissy fit that we got from the right. I mean, I will remember, the devastation I had when they sent in those armed guards and they pulled the honey buns out of my my cafeteria vending machine, and they replaced it with those shitty ass baked lays, which are the grossest thing ever. But it's just so funny now that the Republicans are all like, what we need to do is like improve food in school. So the last time they tried that, y'all flipped the fuck out.
Here is a quote from Rush Limbaugh. The problem is, and dare I say this, it doesn't look like Michelle Obama follows her own nutritionary dietary advice. I'm trying to say that our First Lady does not project the image of a woman that you might see on the cover of Sports Illustrated swimsuit issue, or of a woman Alex Rodriguez might date every 6 months or what have you, says that pill-popping sex tourist that's dead now. So you can say whatever you want about him. Which is crazy because, like, Michelle Obama seems like a fit lady. I don't know what he's trying to say.
Their thing with her is like, you don't even want to go down that.
I know exactly.
But I do believe the rumors Obama is with Jennifer Aniston, and
it's so crazy that Michelle Obama, like, literally, you could just swap her and RFK, and it's like, I guess, like, okay, fine. This, like, let's say, athletically enhanced 70-year-old aristocrat guy that's like clearly on hormone or testosterone. Yeah, okay. Please talk to us about health, Daddy.
Yeah,
it's like, black woman from Chicago. It's basically a Maoist.
You want to talk about these new revelations about the Harris campaign?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, you haven't seen this yet. It's pretty good.
No, I saw Biden talking about him being the greatest.
How do you see
Middle
Biden?
East. Somebody I think Jeet here did a piece early in the week about Joe Biden, basically saying,
what's his post presidency going to be?
Dying, dead, getting buried. Matt Iglesias had a piece saying it's time to bury Biden, which is would have been
those
nice.
Those guys, I cannot stand.
It's a wild little game they have to play right now.
Own your shit, dude. Own your shit.
I was the one saying bury him. I honestly, when I forget when it was clear that Tlaib wasn't going to endorse, but like that was so clearly the obvious route to take with regards to that loser.
I know. I mean, I hope we can get a lot more of her in the next few years. All right. Well, this story is just wild. So, like, Matt, I mean, what's the thesis kind of been for the Democrats? Not that, hey, we should be doing more for working class people. Hey, we shouldn't support burning the skin off of children in Gaza. Maybe we should support things that people like Medicare for all. No. Is that we didn't go on enough podcasts, and all that we need is the left needs their own Joe Rogan. And we'll go and do less traditional media and more digital social media heavy stuff in the next election. That's the big lesson to take from this.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So this is going into it. And I just have to share it because like we're about to get a bunch of these, right? And for people who are younger, kind of not, I'm not that old yet, but y'all haven't gone through these cycles. But basically after these major elections, there will now be a whole host of books, tell-alls that come out. And you're going to sort of have to judge for yourself, how seriously you want to take them, right? Because a lot of times these are about kind of defending yourself from, the criticisms that you and your boss might be getting. Sometimes they can genuinely reveal interesting things. And sometimes, like this one, they might be engaging in trying to protect themselves from criticism, and they might actually be revealing something way more embarrassing. So the NBC News has published this short excerpt from one of these big books that's coming out. The Inside Story of Harris's Lost Gamble and Joe Rogan, Beyonce, and a Late Texas Rally. A new book by Jonathan Allen and A.B. Parnes on the Hill has details about the Harris campaign's botched attempt to schedule an interview with Joe Rogan. And this is a really, really interesting one here. Sorry, Matt, you had something?
No, I'm just kind of taken aback by how ghastly that headline is.
All right, so this is, I won't read the whole piece to y'all, but the story is about what happened behind the scenes with the Joe Rogan interview, right? And the answer was Joe Rogan, a late 1990s sitcom star turned bro with a brain podcaster with nearly 15 million listeners on Spotify, talking about how important he is. On October 11th, Harris Deputy Campaign Manager Robert Flattery, the aide in charge of digital strategy, made the first Zoom call to start negotiating with Rogan's reps. He did not know what to expect. This is really overwritten, by the way. Jesus. I'm sorry, folks. These might be juiced up UFC-looking supplement people, he thought. He was surprised, perhaps a tad disappointed, to find out that Rogan's associates were more like Hollywood agents. Kind of crazy that like the businessman, Matt, with the big business, has business people working for them. It's just so crazy to me, like how naive these people are, that because this is on Spotify and not on NBC, for example, that like there wouldn't be like production. It's crazy.
Joe Rogan has had an agent for 30 years at least. The fuck?
They outlined the podcaster's conditions for an interview: no staff in the studio, no topic restrictions, and Harris would have to sign a waiver. Okay. I think that's fair, by the way. Sure. I think that I like to see more of that. There was one more item in the small print. Harris would have to come to Austin, Texas, which I support. Rogan's reps said that might be negotiable, but he had only once done an interview with an out-of-studio guest. That was with Edward Snowden, who was wanted in the United States at the time.
Right, for obvious reasons. That's so funny.
Honestly, you know me, I'm not a big Rogan defender, but I kind of get where he's coming from. Like he's saying, this is how I do my show. It will take a lot for me to make an exception here.
Yeah, I mean, as somebody who people want to get on, politicians don't get to dictate that shit. If you want access to my audience, you fucking do what I say, or we don't have to carry the interview.
Mm-hmm. Along with fellow Harris campaign advisors, Stephanie Cutter, Brian Fallon, Flattery offered up that Harris would be happy to talk about social media, censorship, weed, and other issues. Great. It really would have been interesting to see her on this. They think that it would have been bad because Rogan is some kind of crypto right-winger. I actually think that her talking about social media, censorship, and weed would be probably disastrous for her, but that's a whole other conversation.
Yeah, I mean, right. This is the thing is, I always thought I think it'd be nice to have the candidate that could have done this appearance. Yeah. I don't think Kamala Harris is that candidate.
Anyway, I don't want to read this whole piece, but there's just so much good stuff here. I mean, we can go through it. Who cares? From their perspective, it was here's some of the interesting things. From their perspective, it was a suggestion of possible topics, not an exhaustive or exclusive list. That's not what Rogan wanted to talk about. Quote, Joe just wants to talk about the economy, the border, and abortion, one of his reps said, according to a person familiar with the negotiations.
He gave you abortion, and also you want to talk about the border anyway. You fucking did it all the time.
And these are the issues
those are good issues.
These are actually the issues of the campaign. And if you want to be the president, you should be able to win these folks over. And also, this is where I'm going to flip the other way. The problem with Kamala Harris is that her and her staff did pitch this. And by the way, this is what I was getting at. It's complete bullshit. By the way, that they're sitting here and saying that we didn't think that this was a list, an exhaustive list. This was just our suggestions. No, I absolutely do not believe that. Sorry, they 100% tried to say this is what she will talk about to you. And this is, after the fact, kind of, cleanup of that.
Yeah, quote the actual correspondence on that.
So, anyways, respect for Rogan. I think that's right. Those are what he should talk to her about. Anyways, after 2 Zoom sessions, they called the Flattery called Rogan with the offer. Will he go to Michigan? And they said no. That it will be Austin or nothing. And they said that's going to be tough. We're only a few weeks out from the election. Harris had less than zero reason to be in Texas. It's not a swing state. Her campaign was flush with cash. So it made no sense to her to run off the trail to raise money. She's in battleground or bust mode. Now, again, this is where we're going to get into the interesting thing, because here they're making very clearly the argument, which is probably correct, that Kamala Harris should not be wasting a bunch of time doing big rallies in the state of Texas right up before the election, right? That's kind of a stupid idea, frankly. And yet it's also very clear that in all the postmortems that we have now gotten from the Democrats, they have seen that her not getting the free media exposure that she would have gotten by going on one of the largest platforms in the country, right, in the world, probably would have also been beneficial, right? It would have.
Why so reactive? Why is it taken to the final weeks of the campaign to get this shit going? You should have beat Trump there. You should have said, hey, we want to be on your shit in April.
Or I understand that, like...
I mean, she was a candidate then, I guess, but...
I understand that it might feel like a big deal to go and travel to do a podcast, right? But again, we're not talking... Like, if you say it like that, like, oh, just going to do a podcast, yeah, maybe like going and doing the daddy, whatever the sex thing that she did. Yeah. Call her daddy. Maybe that wasn't as like helpful as like maybe something big like doing like the Rogan program, which probably would have helped her reach a lot more voters, right? That might have been worth the trip. And also, like, I'm sorry, the way that these people's schedule works, like they fly somewhere, they do a thing, they fly somewhere else. Like this all or nothing thing on their end of like, we either had to like justify a whole rally in Texas or do the Rogan thing. I think it's a kind of a false thing. But this is what's even crazy.
Yeah, this is like Tim Pool being like, oh, we need... They're being precious because they don't want to do it.
This is the thing that's even crazier. Ready? Harris campaign chief O'Malley Dillon broke the impasse. Harris would be in Atlanta on October 24th with Obama. O'Malley Dillon said that the campaign could fly her to Houston for a rally under the cover of visiting a state with one of the nation's most restrictive abortion bans to put her in proximity to Austin. What the fuck are we talking about here? First of all, I know like a lot of these people are kind of confused about the geography of the South, but like Atlanta, it's like over here and Texas is over here, right? So like, it's just a kind of hop skip is already, we're in wild times territory, right?
It's and like, I'll go over to St. Paul, Minnesota, because I'm going to be in Philly anyway. Like, what are you, what?
What the fuck? And then adding on to that Austin is, I mean, it's a quick flight, but like Austin's a 3-hour drive from Houston, right? So we're already like, okay, so what's going on here? And this is the bigger point. They put all this together. Well, I mean, let's get to the revelation, and then I want to get to this big point about this Texas rally. All right, so they're like, okay, she's already in Atlanta, so she can, fly across the country, something that she couldn't do any other day for some reason. They try to get back in touch with it. Now they're going to go through kind of like how Rogan had called Trump a man baby, which again, they all forget this, that like, and this whole idea that Rogan has always been this kind of pro-Trump right-wing guy is wrong. They kind of pushed him away, big time, actually.
And he goes the way the wind blows,
and he goes which way the wind blows. But also, like, don't forget that like he endorsed Bernie Sanders in 2020, and the Democrats made a point of making Rogan a pariah to harm Bernie Sanders. Right? This was a thing that was a part of the plan, is to make. Oh, this proves exactly what we've been saying about Bernie Sanders. He's a
sexist. Yeah.
He's a sexist. Yeah. Right. So there is a part of this where they have kind of created Rogan. Yeah, sure. Rogan has agency. Absolutely. Anyway, blah, blah, blah. Tough talk about how they like are running campaigns. On October 10th, the day before Flaherty first spoke with Rogan's team, the Harris campaign's weekly internal analytics assessment of the race, a 129-page document, had projected Harris winning exactly 270 electoral votes. So now we're getting into like fantasy land here, right? This is the thing that's really great, Matt, is that, because it's going to get really important for the revelation that's coming up, right? Is that basically Kamala has it, right? Really, really, in her hands. And some bad stuff happens that kind of spoils the elections coming. Beneath the top line numbers, the analytics showed why it was important for Harris to reach the voters who listen to Rogan, talk about, how she's struggling with men, Hispanics, and Black men. For many Democratic operatives outside the campaign, the October 22nd announcement that she was going to hold a rally in Houston felt like a palm to the face moment. She was going to lose Texas by a lot, and a visit would not force Trump to spend his limited campaign money there. By the way, that's absolutely right. It was truly insane that they held this rally. But the justification for why they had it and why it was such a clever plan, only a few people knew the real reason why they held this rally, Matt, was to put her in proximity to Joe Rogan. The ongoing negotiations on that were still touch and go. So, I mean, this is the revelation here, is that, well, let me finish this really quick. I'm sorry. Flaherty had called his Rogan contacts on October 18th before the rally was set. We could do Friday the 25th. Wish we had known about this sooner, says Joe Rogan's people. What about Saturday morning? Only if it's before 8:30 a.m., came the tough reply. The tone is different, he thought. The vice president of the United States is offering to come to your show and you keep putting up more hoops. On October 22nd, the same day Harris Camp announced the rally, the AP reported that Trump would be Rogan's guest on Friday, right? Musk and Dana White had convinced Rogan and Trump to do their thing. So this is what the revelation is here, Matt, is that basically what the implication here is that Rogan kind of strung Kamala along so much that she absolutely had to hold a disastrous rally in Houston, a stupid rally in Houston, a wasteful rally in Houston, for the sliver of a chance that maybe she could go on Rogan, and instead Joe Rogan interviewed Trump. When what actually seems like it happened is that the Kamala Harris campaign was being very bizarre about all the conditions that they needed in order for there to be a Rogan interview, from which, I'm sorry, very clearly that they were trying to tell them what the conversation topics could be.
Why not 8:30 on Saturday? Did they ever address that?
No.
Wait, because so the tone, and then they said, what are they?
No, because, but it had to be on their terms. They had to win something, basically, man. I mean, this is why it's so crazy, right?
But what I'm saying is, like, she still should have taken that offer.
I know.
Which would have blunted severely, not maybe enough, but if she went on Rogan a few days after Trump, that is a victory just in terms of chronology.
Yeah,
there.
Slow down the news cycle.
At least a neutralization of it. Probably a victory would have been if you beat him to Rogan and you just fucking made it work. That I don't.
Isn't that crazy? But not only that, I think you're totally right. Yeah, totally. There's no justification there about why they couldn't have just done the morning. Who cares, man? Are you not a morning person, right? You know what I mean?
Right.
It's like it's a bizarre excuse.
And it's
Rogan's playing kingmaker because he feels like he is the kingmaker, because the people who want to be the president of the United States are begging to come on his program. Yeah, he's enjoying it a little bit. Look, whatever. Like his responsibility is not to you, right?
But even if it was, he gave you the earliest time on Saturday. Yeah. So Trump, am I getting that right? That Trump was the Friday right before that?
Friday, and then the next Saturday morning, 8:30 a.m.
So the very first time after, you could have done it. And also, it's like, when did you want it on that Saturday? Do you want to stick around Texas for fucking longer?
He's want to have lunch with me, you know?
Like, you can get out of there and, get back to a battleground state.
And also, by the way, the whole premise here is that, like, she's wasting her time in Texas and she shouldn't be there, right? No, it is absurd. And I wanted to flag this because this is the first of, I think, a lot of bizarre excuses that we're going to get for how badly they ran this campaign. Now, before we hang this up, I did want to share this, if you don't mind, Matt, this kind of weird Texas mythology thing. Just talk about how overwritten this fucking piece is. Her aides scheduled the rally for a Friday night in the fall, October 25th, in Texas. It was as if no one in her team knew that the night reserved for high school football was more sacred than Easter in the state. What the fuck are you talking about? Look, obviously, like, Friday Night Lights, Texas football, it's a big deal. You're like the presidential rally. Like, you can have a rally in Texas on Friday. You can have a concert in Texas on a Friday. You can have a birthday party in Texas on a Friday. It's just such a weird way of interacting with the rest of the world. And that's not her fault. That's these weird kind of ghostwriters or whoever writing this book. But I just had to reflect that it's just terrible writing.
Trump did one on a Friday in Austin. So,
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So anyways, I mean, just a truly unbelievable story, and a continuation of proof of how terribly run this campaign was. Probably one of the worst.
On that note, Matt Karp, former guest of this program, had a good piece in Harper's. I don't know if you saw that. But there's a good paragraph here. Let me make this small.
Sorry, just really quick. I gotta say, Matt Karp's somebody who's owned ocean policy by a lot of fucking people. A lot of people went hard on the Kamala Harris shit. I mean, you remember this. A lot of progressive commentators did. And Matt Karp, it was like, I think there's a problem here, and I think that they're not going to do well with working class voters. And it was like, oh, he's stuck in his old ways. He likes Dan Osborne too much or whatever. You know what I mean? And Matt Karp was, I think, very, very right here. Anyway.
I like this paragraph. In the end, the $1.6 billion operation was a bust, the most expensive failure in American political history, yet the impulse to proclaim Kamala Harris a bad candidate should be avoided. Who would have been better, Gavin Newsom, Pete Buttigieg, Josh Shapiro, or his embarrassing Obama impersonation? Gretchen Whitmer, the victor of two low turnout midterm elections, whose political wizardry, the cycle involved a bizarre TikTok video that mocked. Like, I think that's exactly right. Like, I think it's worth pointing out how terrible of a candidate Kamala was, but that is endemic to Democratic politics. And I think a lot of them would have run into these similar sorts of problems.
I mean, no doubt, because they would have been staffed by the same old guys. I mean, we didn't even get the tough talking of sorry, one more. I'm sorry. I just like, have you spent any time? I think because I went to school in DC, and then my first couple of years before I met you and Michael and came up to New York, I sort of was more in the political world, right? In the sense of like working campaign stuff. Have you spent any time like on campaigns with like the strategists? Have you come across these figures in like real life? They're really obnoxious and annoying, and like they are always kind of like playing a role, and you could tell very much that like they're enjoying like this idea of like that maybe there's a movie camera following me around and like seeing my awesome one-liners. But this bit here, the Harris High Command was not built to lob Hail Mary passes. Its leaders, starting with O'Malley Dillon, cut their teeth on campaigns that ridiculed fellow Democrats for bedwetting, whether crises were real or imagined. Seeking an interview on a popular podcast hardly qualified as a desperation throw downfield, but it was a relatively risky move for campaign leadership that had his campaign hermetically sealed in the manufacturer's box, like she would retain more value without exposure to air and sunlight.
Which is exactly and very obviously the bet that they made with Harris. The nothing's going to change from Biden to Harris.
It's so funny that they both had the same line. Biden's nothing will fundamentally change I wouldn't change anything. It's funny that obviously different context, but fairly similar answers to that kind of question. And, especially in this election, that's very much like change election. They're like, nope, nothing will fundamentally change. Crazy.
Yep.
We love it, folks. Well, I don't even have time, but to get into this map, but I'll tell you, very funny bad news here is that the Texas legislature, which is a crazy gathering of folks who seem to have zero original ideas between the lot of them, they have now instituted a Department of Doge. Texas legislature. It's like, well, it's really funny about it. It's like, I mean, at this point, it's like, it's pure just farce, right? The tragedy's over. It's all farce. But don't even have time to get into all of that goofy shit.
You see Ted Cruz and Waka Flocka Flame did a photo op together.
What is up with that, dude?
It's exactly what you think. Waka Flocka Flame.
He's from Georgia, isn't he?
I'm not sure. I used to like Slippin'. I think that's the only song I know by him. But he
Hard in the Paint.
He did a. Oh yeah, that's right. He has a meme coin. So that's what he's doing. With Ted Cruz. So. Man,
this would be awesome. The whole country's just going to implode. And like the last like information that's going to shoot out from our dying society is an advertisement for Waka Coin.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
the aliens are going to come and be like, "What happened to Earth?" the last message is like, "Meme coin, let's go."
Collapse coin.
Yeah. All right, friends, we'll be back on Tuesday. I think we have a good guest, but we will announce that later. See you all very soon, and take care.
Peace.